And I'm checking the video.
Is that you making funny noise?
That's not me, no.
It's a car alarm outside my window, actually. Is that you making funny noise?
Okay, we're live. We're all good. So, hello and welcome to the very first episode of Purple Tories. Today I have joined with me two of my favourite kippers or ex-kippers, I'm not quite sure at the moment. That is Mr. Richard Braine, who was of course the leader of UKIP, and Rhys Coombs, who is the founder and CEO of Kipper Central. So I thought on the stream today, we'd basically talk to you, Richard, and basically see what the hell happened with UKIP.
Yeah. Well, shall I give you a quick answer to that?
Yeah, don't bore us with the details. Just give us the juicy bits.
Well, essentially, I entered the leadership at a time when there was conflict in the party over particular issues about what people should talk about and so on. And there's, I think, some disparate views in the party. And in particular, there were two fringes, some who felt that some of the decisions Gerard Batten had made were absolutely daft and catastrophic, and others who felt that that he'd actually been quite a good leader and had the guts to talk about things that needed talking about. And right on the fringes of those two views were some fairly dedicated people. One fringe had a serious amount of control of NEC, chairman of the party and so on. And the other fringe set up a group called Integrity, which went on promoting, for instance, the membership of Tony Robinson, which I've never believed in at all and I've never supported. And so I had hoped that I would manage to unite supporters of the party and find a middle ground in that particular argument. And I failed to do so. And the conflagration raged even harder after I took over. We saw, for instance, Ben Walker say that he was going to lead the charge against Batten supporters. And we saw the Integrity Group, continue with the direction that they want to go in. And I didn't particularly. And in the end, after sort of a month, 2 months, it became clear that there was absolutely no trust for me amongst the NEC, the chairman. There's a couple of people on the NEC who were fantastic. Paula Walters is fantastic, and Mark Harland, he's a lovely man, very switched on, and good common sense. But by and large, I didn't get much support from the NEC. As you know, I wasn't really able to put together my team. And in the end, it just became sort of trench warfare. And, I had an email, for instance, from the chairman saying that she didn't feel it necessary to answer my phone calls anymore. So that sort of thing. And that's, so in the end, I realized that I couldn't do anything. We had a chairman who was censoring, or effectively had taken on herself the power to monitor what I say to members of the party. And we had a party secretary interpreting the party's constitution in the most bizarre of ways to stop the chairman, to stop me having an EGM to replace the chairman. And in the end, and then there was some sort of witch hunt into the newly elected general secretary, who was the returning officer for the NEC election. There are people making serious decisions on the NEC who have absolutely no right to be there anymore because the constitution is very clear. The term is 3 years. In exceptional circumstances, you might get up to a 3-month extension, but only in exceptional circumstances. And we haven't had exceptional circumstances, really. There should have been an NEC ballot, went out with the leadership ballot paper and wasn't. And so that was a wasted opportunity. but there's really no reason why NEC members should go on sitting for longer than their terms. And we're seeing it happening now with Piers Warhope and Fiona Mills and Donald Mackay going on. They think that they have a right to go right up to the end of their 3-year term, as if everybody gets their own exit date from the NEC. Everybody gets his own NEC election. We could have 6 or 7 NEC elections a year, according to the scheme that these people think the Constitution supports. It doesn't. There's one NEC election a year, and if you're in your last year and your time's nearly up, well, that's it. You're out when your time's up. But they still continue to operate, really essentially outside the rules. I don't think they've understood.
It's not the first time they've done it. Oh, I know.
No, that's right. I mean, it's been going on. It's been going on for quite a long time. But
Richard, sorry to interrupt. Could you put some headphones in, because we're getting a bit of an echo?
Sure. Hold on a sec. Let me do that. Bear with me. So essentially, that's the situation I found myself in, where I don't have any trust in, I'm afraid to say, in the chairman or the now ex-party secretary, or in my view, ex-chairman, in fact. She sent an email, as you probably know, to some NEC members and some people who are not rightfully on the NEC, and excluding some other NEC members, saying, could you please have a vote to make the NEC my direct manager, or who I answer to, instead of the leader, because my contract says it's the leader. Well, the Constitution says that the chairman is appointed by the leader. So it's even unconstitutional to do that, even if it were possible just to send an email and say, change my contract. The NEC does not have the power to appoint a chairman. It's just not in the Constitution. And that's effectively what she was asking for. She was asking the NEC to appoint a chairman, because the chairman herself was actually appointed by the leader. And that's just completely...
The Constitution's pretty clear on it all, isn't it? The Constitution says that the way it works is the leader puts forward an appointment, and provided their appointment isn't the devil, they approve it. It's the leader's decision, so that the chairman can back the leader and act as a mediator between the leader and the NEC. So obviously with Kirsten, she was appointed by Gerard, as we all know. Then she somewhat went rogue, but because before you'd appointed a chairman, she was the sitting chairman. But once you appointed a chairman, obviously Liz, the NEC decided from some ridiculous accusations to reject her. What they should have done is come back to you and said, what do you want to do now? Instead, what they did is, Liz is completely off the table, never happening. We're going to come forward with some suggestions. Am I right in thinking that they came to you then, saying these are the people you're allowed to choose?
No, they had a vote against Liz, and that was before she was suspended on these on these grounds, which it's questionable whether they're suspendable grounds anyway. I mean, it shouldn't be a suspension offence to investigate whether there's legal recourse for decisions made within the party. No legal action was taken. It was simply an opinion sought on that, and so again, a quite unfair suspension of her. But at any rate, that's all in the past. They voted against her, and at that point, I said, well, in that case, since the Constitution says I can request an EGM about replacing the chairman, that's what I'll do. And they said, well, no, it says you can request it, but and Richardson's opinion, for what it's worth, was that the NEC has the right to veto dispute resolution with the NEC. Now, there's not much point having that clause in the Constitution if the NEC gets to decide whether there can be any dispute resolution, because the NEC obviously is going to come down on the side of the NEC, because, I mean, that's what you would expect them to do. But clearly, it's not the intent of that clause in the Constitution, and so it's reading the Constitution in a tricky way to try to ensure that the dispute continues, and it did continue. And the whole point of that clause saying there can be an EGM is to actually resolve disputes of this kind.
Well, I think didn't it come down to like the wording of the Constitution was something like the leader may request the
Exactly.
leader can request an EGM, and so it was something along the lines of an EGM may be held if the leader requests it, or something like that. So the idea
No,
was when the leader requests
it was
it.
just the word request. Richardson said it says request. It doesn't say it will be granted. It doesn't say, and who should grant it? Oh well, the NEC. And that, of course, that interpretation is completely topsy-turvy because, as you may know, in the branch officer's handbook, the party publishes a schema for the actual hierarchy and structure in the party, which has the leader at the top, and it has the NEC answering to the leader, and it has the chairman answering to the leader. And they actually publish that in a UKIP document, but it's actually supported by the wording of the Constitution, which says that the leader appoints the chairman. But the other interesting thing is that the NEC, of course, is elected by the members. The members of the NEC and some of the people we've been talking about, they seem to think that because they automatically become directors of UKIP Limited, that they somehow own UKIP, and that they actually, they see the leader as subordinate to themselves because they see themselves as the owners of UKIP. They're only the actual shareholders in UKIP Limited, which is not the party. UKIP Limited is not owned by the members of the party. In fact, UKIP, the party, could wind up UKIP Limited if it wanted. It only set the company up whenever it was, 10 years ago. And it was only set up specifically with a view to carrying out some sort of corporate functions of the party itself. So UKIP Limited is actually subordinate to the party. We know it's subordinate because as soon as you're elected an NEC member, you're automatically, by virtue of that, a director of UKIP Limited. So it's the members who are in charge, and the members elect their NEC members, and the members elect the leader. And so the party is really the boss. And this is what I think many members of the NEC have lost sight of. They think that they're because they're on a company board, that company actually has power over the party. The leader is the elected leader of the party, and they think that it gives them power over the leader. And I think that's an absurdity. And I actually think that UKIP, the party, should wind up the company just to settle this issue, so the NEC members understand who their boss is, according to the diagram published by the party in the branch officer's handbook. The leader is elected by the members, and the NEC and the chairman are supposed to serve the leader. But anyway, to prove that point, you'd probably have to go to court, which would cost money and time and be very boring, and would probably end up with a no party at the end of it anyway. So I decided this is all a waste of time, and these people are really not worth arguing with. They, as so many people have said to me, it's like two bald men fighting over a comb. There's no, for me, if we've got someone who refuses to actually be suspended or sacked, our supreme eternal leader, Miss Harriet, and she wants to carry on this silly game and sort of inventing silly court cases against me on the basis of some data which I didn't.
I've seen that, Richard. And I'd really like you to speak briefly about what that is about, because I saw, didn't she send you some kind of letter which was quite sinister from what I remember?
I genuinely am concerned for her mental health. I don't think that at first, she sent me a copy of Adam Richardson's Big Brother's book about cybercrime law.
Yeah. Essentially,
what I did was this. Because I had been denied the ability to email the members directly when I was leader, I decided that it was very, very important, bearing in mind the false allegations made against Jeff Armstrong, the returning officer and general secretary, at the NEC meeting of the 12th of October. I decided that it was important to make sure, if it was the last thing I did, that the members could see what was happening on the NEC. In other words, that they were very tangibly aware of the purge that was going on and the intention to stop people standing in the NEC elections, and I think quite unconstitutionally. And really for political reasons, sort of political control of the list of people on the ballot paper. And so I authorized Mark Dent to go to head office, and he went in, and they made him a cup of tea, and he, with the help of Ruth and David, the head office staff, he organised for Jeff Armstrong's email of the list of NEC candidates who Jeff accepted as being eligible to stand, be sent out to all the members. It was important to do that because I knew that the NEC were going to carry out a purge of candidates. And I thought it was very important that the members became aware of this because, you know, I have many times on the television said, I support UKIP because it's a democratic party, and that's why I wouldn't join Brexit party and so on and so forth. And what I was really discovering at that time is that the opposite was true, that the NEC were running the party, you know, it was really like sort of a gang world where, you know, who's on the list and who isn't. Oh, well, I like so-and-so, or so-and-so said this, or so-and-so went to a meeting with so-and-so, or, you know, and, you know, you've got people sitting there like Neil Hamilton who've been on a stage with Tommy Robinson. So it's not exactly, you know, you can't, you know, they can't exactly kind of, you know, say, you know, I'm holier than thou and all that sort of stuff. And so it really was just a purge. And I wanted the members to know that this was happening. So Mark Dent went to the office. He sent the email from Jeff Armstrong to the members saying, this is your list of 21 NEC candidates. And that was really the job done, important thing to do, I think. And then, of course, needless to say, Harriet, who I'd already told she was suspended from her duties as chairman because I thought that she was going completely beyond what was
her remit,
beyond her remit. And anyway, the leader appoints her. So, you know, my view was that she should answer the leader, as it says in her contract. But she then contacted the email people and took back control of it and started sending out these silly messages that so many people have been so I think put off by. And so now we know what goes on. They culled 8 of the 21 candidates from the NEC election. They managed to, I suppose, keep themselves in a majority, although God knows what's going to happen on Saturday, because you know, in my opinion, Fiona Mills shouldn't be in the room. Her term runs out mid-December, so this NEC election has basically ended her term. And Piers Warhope, again, term finished. And, you know, there's questions, I think, over Ben Walker, who's seriously brought the party into disrepute with actual criminal activity, unlike the silly court fiddle that they're trying to bring against me. It didn't have a case number even. You know, I think the judge was looking, thinking, what the hell is this about? This is a load of nonsense. So the leader of a party organized for someone to go into its head office and send an email to the members. And this is supposed to be some great data crime. Yeah. You know, it's just nonsense.
Reese, you were writing articles all through this whole fiasco. What did you make of the whole thing, and what's your particular insight into it all?
In terms of specifically on the email thing, I don't know the legalities of what happened. I haven't looked into that incident. I suspect, as with everything else that's happened, the NEC and Kirsten are making ridiculous decisions and just coming up with a load of nonsense to cause trouble for our side of things. However, I don't know the laws around it, so I don't want to make assumptions about that. But in terms of generally what's happened, I think it's absolutely awful. I think Richard said it perfectly. You know, we're a democratic party. The entire point of UKIP is that for the first time in a long time in British politics, individuals can actually have a significant impact on what happens in their party, which is fantastic. And that's why so many people join and stay in UKIP. But of course, what's happened recently is anybody who's dared mention, you know, either he who shall not be named or certain issues surrounding certain religions or certain cultures suddenly is cold on the party. They're suspended. If you join Integrity, or even if you barely mention that you might support Integrity, you get suspended. If you happen to stand in support of Gerald Batten, you're banned from the party and banned from standing in any elections in the party. Anybody who disagrees with the NEC's direction is blocked from having their say, blocked from having their view, and blocked from talking to the members. You know, if
Kirsten... Ryan, Reece, mention Ryan, because Ryan's an interesting case. Ryan's been on the NEC, and Ryan boycotted the conference for the same reason that lots of other people did, which he's unhappy about the way that Gerard's being treated, however you look at it. And are you still there?
Yep.
Can you hear me? And so Ryan was told by our supreme eternal chairman that that the reason he was not allowed to stand for the NEC was because he hadn't gone to conference, and he'd encouraged other people not to go to conference. And I mean, if it's going to get like that, it really is. I mean, it's Maoist. The sort of the sort of things that could really. I mean, if you look at that, then. And they're still apparently, as I hear, they're still having meetings with Pat Braine, who actually participated in the setting up of a rival party.
Yeah.
And yet she's they still want to have meetings with her. So from that point of view, there's no rhyme or reason to it. It is just, I'm afraid, a silly turf war. I don't want any part of it. That's the reason why I've resigned, is because I am not prepared to be the leader of a party that treats its members like this. I don't want any part of that. I don't want to be associated with it. The reason why I've resigned is because the NEC and chairman and Neil Hamilton and people like that and Ben Walker are bringing me into disrepute personally. I don't want to be associated with them and their anti-democratic activities.
My inclination.
I'm going to butt in. I've got to head off now. I've got somewhere to go. But it's been a good chat, and obviously you guys carry on. But I agree with pretty much everything Richard said so far. I think the NEC and Kirsten in particular have made some awful decisions, and if you wouldn't say they have already, they're going to be the death of the party.
Reese, can I ask you one thing?
Quickly.
To what extent do you think Neil Hamilton might be behind a lot of this? Because I'm getting the feeling that he might be using other people as his henchmen, like Kirsten. That is my feeling.
I don't know. Neil's quite strong on a lot of issues, even issues that people have been banned for talking about. I don't know. I from what I've seen of Neil, I used to think he was fantastic, but the stuff he's come out with lately has shocked me, really, because it's been so politically correct, so weak, so spineless, pathetic, really. Childish playground attacks on people. It's just it doesn't help anyone. I don't know where it's coming from. I think it's coming from a mixture of half people who genuinely want to save UKIP and think we're all a bunch of crazy racists, but probably mostly people who want UKIP to die, who want either the Brexit Party or the Tories or whatever else to win, and they're just trying to kill off UKIP. It's happened before. People have admitted it in books that they joined UKIP on order of the Tories or something to then bring UKIP down. It wouldn't surprise me if that's happening again with someone from Nigel, someone from the Tories, or somewhere else. Who knows? Anyway, I've got to be off, but cheers for the chat, guys. And
good to chat to you. I look forward to chatting to you again soon.
Definitely. Bye, guys.
See you later, Reese. Okay. Well, I think I'll fire that same question at you, Richard. What do you think about the theory of Neil Hamilton being the sort of George Soros in this whole scenario?
I don't know. To be honest, I don't really care anymore. Those people regard me as suspended from the party. Well, okay, fine. If you want it that way, obviously, lots of people have put in lots of work over many years. I've been campaigning for Brexit since the mid '90s. Suspending me from the party, I think it's just childish. It's just nonsense. And the point really is that I don't want to stand for election for a party that treats me like that. And as a result, I'm out. I'm not interested in helping Heriot or Hamilton or Walker or any of these people get anywhere with anything. And I think the sad thing about that is that arguably, as has just been broached, maybe that's their plan. Maybe they actually want to wind up the party, and of course the emoluments of any legacies and so on would come to the presumably the final directors of the part of UKIP Limited. So maybe that's what they're hanging out for. I don't know. I mean, it's quite an accusation. I don't know. You could argue, no, they've got the party's best interests at heart, and they're trying to save it from far right extremism and all this sort of stuff. Well, I don't know. I don't really. I haven't seen. I mean, if I had seen some really good ideas come forward at NEC meetings for how to grow the membership, how to put money in the bank for the party, how to do better in elections, how to actually do anything, then I could be more open to that interpretation of what's been going on. But in fact, the NEC meetings that I went to, was simply a group of people squashing any sensible ideas put forward and sitting there providing none of their own. Frankly, they didn't see anything happen. Neil is primarily concerned with his re-election to the Welsh Assembly, and as he said himself, that's what politicians do. If you don't get re-elected, you're not actually doing your job.
But for me, the theory of them purposely trying to take down UKIP, for me, is too generous to what I regard as their level of intellect. For me, they are just not very bright people who think they're doing the best for the party they once knew, the party when it was under Farage and, doing well in the polls and things like that. I think it's probably more likely just a sort of cult around people like Neil Hamilton, who believe that they know what's best, and people sort of doing his bidding and that kind of thing, rather than them trying to actually take down the party. That is my instinct, I would say. I remember talking to Kirsten Herriot ages ago. This was at an event before the European elections. And I'm sorry that some might regard this as irrelevant, but I find it very relevant. And I remember late towards the end of the night, she said, "Oh, I have to go home now because I've got to watch the end of Love Island." And for me, that just sums up, the level of intellect of these people. You can't be a political operator, a serious one anyway, and watch Love Island, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I take your point. I mean, I don't know. I'm always mystified by people who watch stuff like that. Life is short enough. But no, I mean, it's interesting. She had a month off. Obviously, she wasn't well, and I hope she's okay now. But she then, as I understand it, went away on holiday. And we're a month before a general election, and again, that seems to me to be an odd thing to do. I don't really understand it. Perhaps it was booked in advance or something. I don't know, but
and obviously we didn't even.
I haven't seen anything happen. I haven't seen anything happen. I haven't seen. There's a lot of criticism of me not putting forward policy and not doing this, not doing that. I mean, I wasn't allowed to email the members, so it's quite. I mean, I wasn't allowed to put together any sort of team really, because everybody that I suggested for anything was, either immediately blocked or was rapidly found to be wanting in some way or another, so that everybody ended up suspended. And so, there you go. To be honest, I wash my hands of it now. The thing that makes me sad is I love the members of the party. I love visiting the branches, and I love meeting the members. The members are fantastic. So many great people. I mean, I could reel off to you now 50 names of wonderful people that I've met. Keith Jenkins and Carrie from Great Yarmouth and Dalila, and I mean the list would go on and on. Kim, and you name it. I could just write down for you now. Tens and tens, probably hundreds of names of wonderful people that I've met, and that I feel a real camaraderie with. And I really hoped when I stood for election that I could serve those people well and do something about getting the party back on track and get it past this silly squabble that has turned into an existential crisis for the party. And I wasn't able to do it. And, to some extent, I do feel that my efforts have been pretty much sabotaged. And by actually a handful of people, a tiny number of the members on each side, and I'm very sad that I've let down the great majority of members by not being able to lift the party up out of this conflict.
Well, I don't think anyone would accuse you of not being able to keep the party afloat. Let's face it, your hands were tied, as we've just spoken about. I think I actually found it quite amusing in a bit of a perverse way, because I thought if anyone can be more polite and reasonable, you can't find anyone more than Richard Braine. So the fact that they had a problem with you just shows that they're going to have a problem with anyone. So it kind of proves the point in a way, I think.
Well, yeah, that may be true, and of course, there's been a long succession of leaders who have all been found wanting in their own ways, and there it is. It's just a shame. This election, it would have been great if UKIP was on the up and was gaining vote share, and I would have been really thrilled about that. And the truth is that I would still love to see UKIP succeed once the members are allowed to actually take back control.
Are you aware that Count Dankula released a video today about leaving UKIP?
Yeah, I saw it and I understand it completely. And he makes perfect sense to me in that video. He usually makes perfect sense to me. I think, and some of the silly things and rude things that are said about him, I just think are pathetic. It's a very reasonable, moderate, sensible, intelligent video. And basically, I agree with it, and I can't criticize him at all for wanting to leave the party in its current state. The party has basically been hijacked by a cabal of people that wish to treat a great many members of the party as if they're lepers.
Yeah, well said. I've actually got more questions than I anticipated here, so I feel like I should quick fire you a few questions here.
Great, I'm ready.
Okay, so one of the questions is, Richard, what are your plans for the future? Do you plan on starting a party or joining another?
I'm open-minded about all of that. Starting a party is a very difficult thing to do. We've seen too many splinters come off UKIP over the last few years, and I think what actually needs to happen is a more of a conglomeration of parties. Let's say anti-Marxist parties. Can I say anti-Marxist parties? I would like
under the Tory banner.
I'm not convinced that Tories are anti-Marxists quite yet. They may be heading in that direction, and we see some changes in Europe recently with various elections. And it may be that the Tories begin to return to their more traditional
once glorious state under Thatcher, maybe.
Well, I don't know about that, but certainly, they seem still at the moment much too keen to adopt policies that I think you could regard as progressive.
Yeah, I agree.
And they're still ignoring, good working people in this country who are being obviously pushed to the sides of their own lives, and so perhaps maybe not under a Tory banner. I don't know. I've never voted Tory. I hope I never do vote Tory. It's never, I've never supported the party. I think the party, to my mind, is still, still has Stockholm syndrome for the EU. Still, I think that we're going to see Boris actually push through that Remain plus deal, which is Merkel's deal, the Merkel-May-Boris deal, which means that we can't ever leave, and means that we really are a vassal state with no representation in the European institutions, no ability to make trade deals, and really just trapped entirely. So I think that deal is appalling. In a way.
Well, that leads me into something. That leads me into something interesting.
I've got more respect for the Lib Dems because at least the Lib Dems solution to this, remain in the EU, you end up with MEPs and someone on the commission. So you could argue that the Lib Dems deal is a much better deal than the Merkel-May-Boris deal.
Right.
So I just can't see myself ever supporting the Tories. They are the party of treachery. They're the party of the EU. They are the bequeath of Heath. And
the thing that things can change. Things can change, Richard. Things can change, and you must see, the exit of people like Philip Hammond and Rory Stewart as somewhat significant.
Yeah, I think that's a great move. I'd love to see more of those people gone, but I'd also like to see the party start to really look out for true Brexiters and decide to bring proper Brexiters in, because you know, that they've been very secretive about that. A friend of mine went to meet a very well-known Tory lord about a year ago, say, you know, I'm thinking of joining the party, would like to be a parliamentary candidate and so on. And this Tory lord said to him, well, you know, did you support Brexit? He said, oh, yes. And he said, well, then forget it, because you'll never get anywhere in the Tory party. And, you know, it still is like that. I mean, Rees-Mogg, I mean, to be fair, Mogg has only now managed to achieve any sort of proper, you know, position in government after 10 years on the, you know, on the back benches. But it's only after he voted for surrender in the third vote on the withdrawal agreement. So, you know, it's only after that he's come into government. And so I still don't trust them an inch. I still think that they are gunning for fake Brexit, Tory fake Brexit too. And I don't see any evidence that that isn't the case.
Well, the only argument I would say against that is that for Boris to be able to reopen the negotiations with the EU, he had to not completely overhaul the deal and completely change it. So he sort of had his hands tied in a way. If you consider the fact that the only way to get a deal through Parliament, the most likely way of getting Brexit through Parliament is through a deal. So if you look at it like that, I think that he was probably working with the best of what he had, I would say. And also, I wanted to touch on something which has happened more recently, which is obviously Nigel Farage is actually saying he's not going to stand against Conservative seats. What did you make of that?
Well, you know, it's one you know, it's one strategy, and obviously we've talked about this. You know, two months ago or so, I said that we would approach this question very carefully and very strategically to make sure that we didn't actually diminish the chances of true pro-Brexit candidates getting into Parliament. So, you know, it's a perfectly logical approach to the problem.
But Farage actually said that Boris has made good enough concessions for him regarding not being in alignment with the EU after 2020 as far as things like trade deals, and that he will actually pursue a Canada plus type deal. So do you believe Farage is genuine there when he says, you know, oh, Boris has made some good concessions here, or do you think this is more tactics?
Well, you know, I'm deeply cynical, and I'm straight out of the Gerard Batten camp of Brexit, which is,
yeah,
there's one way to leave, and that is that you unilaterally declare that you've left and wait for them to come knocking on the door when they realise that they are so heavily dependent on exports to the UK, probably the EU's, you know, biggest, you know, most important customer. So, you know, I come from that school of thought. So when it
but do you really think
hang on, let me just clarify that. So when it comes to this issue of you know, some of the more seemingly naive pronouncements of Nigel Farage, you know, I am mystified by them. His hope seems to spring eternal from him, and that's great in a way. I suppose, you know, you've got to go on believing, but equally the problem is that when you get set up to be betrayed again and again and again, you know, this has been going three years since the actual vote, and really all we've seen from our Parliament is the exploration of every possible avenue of avoiding delivering it, and nothing seems to have changed. So am I inclined to believe Boris on that? No. We need no deal, which means hundreds of deals. It means freedom. It means prosperity. It means a bright, brilliant new future for this country. We need that, not this terrible arrangement that keeps us under the European Courts of Justice. They can pass any law they want, and we're bound by it. We don't have any representation in the Parliament or the Commission. You know, we will not have taken back control of our fishing waters. We won't be able to make trade deals, most importantly. And, you know, the fishing question is the case in point. You know, what it's likely we're going to see, and you know, this is going to be interesting to see if I'm right about this, but I think there's a real possibility that what we're going to see is EU countries given access to our fishing waters increasingly. So in other words, instead of us taking back control of our fishing waters, I think we're going to see the opposite happen. I think we're going to see them bargained away to all EU countries, And it's just not Brexit. It's not Brexit.
But do you think, speaking theoretically, that it's actually possible to get through a no deal without Parliament somehow stifling the Prime Minister? We all saw what happened with Article 50 being extended, how I was actually shocked. I didn't know that the Prime Minister could be forced by Parliament to sign a letter saying, I want a deal to the EU. I didn't even know that the Prime Minister was that controlled by Parliament. So do you really think just a no deal is that possible to implement?
I think it was. Yeah, I think if you'd had a government that really wanted to leave, they would have just punched a hole straight in it. They would have said, right.
How would you have got it through Parliament though?
Well, I look, you'd have to have a majority first of all.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that this is the problem, that we've got a parliament of traitors. You'd have to have a majority, and you'd have to say, right, we're leaving, we're repealing the European Communities Act, and we regard ourselves now as having left the European Union. Hook, line, and sinker, we've complied with Article 50, and we're just out. And you can continue trading, as Gerard always says. You can continue trading with us on World Trade Organization rules, or if you want, we can go on trading as we are, according to Article 24 of GATT, and just ask for a 10-year period from the World Trade Organization to sort it out. So I just think that if Parliament had wanted to leave, if the government had wanted to leave properly, they would have just done it. Don't forget that traditionally international treaties are always signed by government, royal prerogative. It's a brand new thing for Parliament to try to insert itself between the process of treaty signing and government itself. That's the new development, and it's just another trick to try to avoid actually leaving.
Okay, fair enough. I've got some more questions here. I've got
I'm gonna
one
have to do something about my battery, so I'm just going to move around a little bit.
Okay, no worries. So I'll read you the question here. This is from Angela, and she said, branches are organising EGMs. What happens if they are refused? How effective will the EGMs be? Oh, you've got yourself on mute. That's great. I'll wait for him to sort himself out with his battery. Can you hear me, Richard? There we go. You're back. Oh, I can't hear you for some reason. Can you make sure your microphone... Oh, I think you need to plug in your headphones, maybe? Okay, seem to have lost him, or I have anyway. Try re-plugging in your headphones, Richard, because I can't seem to hear you at the moment. Try re-plugging in your headphones. God damn it. Let's see if I can mute him and then unmute him, see if that makes a difference. Unmute. Oh, and he's gone. You know what? Stay tuned, because I'm going to try and get him back on the line. Let's see. I think he's probably trying to join at the moment, actually. I will get to your questions, by the way. As soon as he comes back, I will reel through some of these questions, because we've got quite a lot which have built up here. It's interesting to hear from Richard. For me, he's very much cynical about the Tories in general, and I totally understand that. I was exactly the same for so long. But I actually do believe the Conservatives have changed massively recently, and I think that's epitomised by the fact that you've had 20 MPs fired essentially by Boris. He's taken the whip away from them. You've had people like Rory Stewart, Philip Hammond, Matthew Parris, long Tory supporters, wetbags, who have decided, the party is too right-wing for them now and too Brexity. I think that's a pretty good insight into the fact that things are actually changing a lot for the better in the Tory party. But let's see if I can call Richard quickly and get him back online. It's ringing. Oh, wait, have we got him back? Let's see. Add to stream. Hello, are you back? Oh, I can't hear you. Try saying something. I can't hear you, I'm afraid. Something to do with your microphone. Are you plugged in? Are you?
How about now?
Check your. Is there any way to? Oh, I'm back. I can hear you. All good.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you. We've got you back.
Okay.
Brilliant.
I don't know what went wrong there. Everything suddenly stopped.
Okay. No problem. The question I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
The question I was going to ask you from Angela is: branches are organising EGMs. What happens if they are refused? How effective will the EGMs be?
Okay, it's tricky. It's tricky bringing about change by EGM. We tried it in 2016. We wanted to have a review of the constitution and make some changes to it because, as you probably know, there are some problems with it. But you have to comply by having everybody has to have precisely the same motion to the comma. Otherwise, the NEC is going to stop you. And it needs to be within a time limit, and you need to be able to show that you contacted all your members to give them the ability to turn up to the meeting which passed the motion. So it's quite tricky to do it. It may be that the branches can do it. I haven't participated really in this because I think the odds of pulling it off are low. And I'm particularly worried because I've seen the way the NEC and particularly the party secretary twist and abuse the constitution. For instance, the thing of holding Jawbatan in not in good standing forever. It doesn't really say that in the constitution. The issue of not allowing an EGM on the appointment of a chairman, and then, of course, in particular, the fact that people were allowed to sit on the NEC for 4 years. There's just no way the constitution supports that at all. And so I have quite a low expectation of the extent to which the NEC and party secretary will uphold the constitution. And so do I look at what they did in the NEC election, cutting out 8 people for various reasons. I don't it's not clear whether they're sincere about all of those reasons. Perhaps they were, but I just don't I don't have any faith in the NEC at all anymore. I think that they are operating using the rules for their own political ends, and who's on the NEC anyway? Who's on it? That question isn't even settled. There's people. There's still people. I mean, for instance, Alan Ban, who's a nice old gent who just given great amount to the party over many years, but he sat on the NEC, and proposed motions well beyond the limit of his term. And if you can't have the NEC, if the NEC won't actually uphold the constitution and the rules of the party, then who will? And the answer, their view seems to be, oh well, we're a company board, so we can more or less do what we want. No, it's a political party with a published constitution. The relevance of being a company board, it's nothing to do with this stuff. Okay, it's a party that has a constitution, and that.
And the problem, isn't there a problem there as well that lawyers don't really want to touch political parties as far as their constitutions, as we saw with the Gerard case, where Alan Craig brought about the case where the NEC were wrong to stop Gerard from being able to stand, and I'm pretty sure the lawyers just said, "There's no way we can argue this case. We don't get involved in politics." So essentially, the NEC, by being directors of the company, they can interpret the constitution how they like, and you can't really punish them for it because lawyers won't get involved anyway.
Well, that's right. And so, yeah, to some extent, they've gone rogue. I mean, God knows what's going to happen on Saturday is all I can say.
What's happening Saturday? It's just a regular NEC meeting.
NEC meeting, yeah. But I mean, who's meant to be there? I mean,
right.
People can't even agree on who's supposed to be in the room.
Yeah. Well, we've had a couple comments here about liquidating the party. Would it even be possible for the members to liquidate the party? Is that just not possible either?
Well, I tell you what, one thing that the members could do with an EGM is that they could choose to wind up UKIP Limited. Sack all the staff, and it's very sad. The staff down at Lexstrom are wonderful, but clearly the way things are going, you know, the prospects for them are not good, and I'm very sad about what's happened with regards to that. But you know, if people are going to be, you know, just go rogue. I mean, if Kirsten's going to go rogue the way she has, then and use, you know, use the sort of the company to hide behind, then totally get rid of it. Why not get rid of it and just be a political party for a moment until the party's sort of found its feet again and has a better plan for the future. But I mean, I don't know. Look, I'm out. I resigned. You know, I discovered that it was impossible for me to do anything. It was impossible for me to put forward any ideas that would be, you know, would be taken well and would be turned into something good, something, you know, with any sort of future. So I'm out, and I just don't feel that I can support parties. So I'm sorry to say it to the members, but you know, you're going to have to find your own way to fix the problems. I've tried, I've failed. I apologize for that. I probably didn't understand what I was up against. You said earlier during this conversation that maybe it's just a bunch of inadequate people. I think that there's more. It's much more than that. It's a coordinated. It is a coordinated, and you know, antithesis to the democratic traditions of the party and to what quite a lot of the members think. And I think it's quite coordinated. So that's why, for me, I decided to move on, because I realized I can't make any headway against this, and it doesn't interest me. I said to Freddie 100 times, I did not join this party to become involved in conflict, you know, with other members. I'm not interested in fighting UKIPers.
Well, I remember speaking to Liz, the person you wanted to be chairman, and I remember her saying, I'm a political animal. I'm not interested in this kind of thing. You know, these people are inept. They don't know how to be real political campaigners. They're just bureaucrats.
Well, you know, that may be the case. I mean, I don't want to really be rude about anyone. I mean, obviously I have been, you know, considering what I've had to deal with. I think I've been reasonably calm and measured in my responses. But yeah, I just can't support the party anymore. I can't stand on a platform, any kind of platform, and tell people vote UKIP. It's great. It's going to solve this country's problems, because it can't even solve the problems in its own boardroom. So, you know.
Well, I would actually prefer the party to be liquidated altogether, if that is possible, because I'd rather just see them go down rather than, you know, keep alive just a rubbish version of UKIP. So
well, what I would love to see, no, because my view is that my view is that the the path that the NEC and chairman have taken over the last few months is actually unsustainable. And if they continue doing this, the wheels will finally and once and for all come off the party.
Fall off. So the members won't even have to worry about liquidating it.
Yeah, I mean, but something might come out of the ashes, and I suppose that's what I'm interested in, is that UKIP has achieved extraordinary things, and I do hold some hope that the party can actually be rescued, and that it can, decriminalize, at the top level, and that real activists who love the party and what it stands for can get into those powerful positions and bring the party back to what it always did, which is, say the unsayable things, and really campaign well for, the goals that we all share. And I do believe it can come back to that, but obviously it's not going to do it while the current Supreme Eternal Chairman is continuing, and also while some people on the opposite side of that great conflict continue as well. I think that while that conflict carries on, it will go nowhere. The level of mistrust, not mistrust, distrust actually, the level of distrust and suspicion is, makes it impossible for me to participate.
Well, Leslie here has commented, "You acted entirely with integrity, Richard. To have stayed would have made you complicit with the NEC's disgusting behaviour." So there you go.
Well, that's it. I mean, look, one thing that I did do is really try to get members informed that there were 21 people on the NEC ballot paper, and then they discovered that there turned out to be 12, 13, whatever it was. I think a lot of members know a bit more about what goes on now, and hopefully that that could start to bring about change in the party. And I would love to have done much more. I'd love to have brought about all the plans that I had, and built a team and really made it go. I would love to have done that. I still yearn for it. I still hope that one day that can happen. But I realized now, backed into a corner as I have been, there's no progress that I could make, and I better move out of the way. And if someone else can do something with it, well, good luck to them.
I've had someone called Celtic Crusader here agree with me and say, exactly, you're part of the problem if you watch Love Island. Thank you, Celtic Crusader.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to crappy TV like that, I don't have a TV anymore. I got rid of it. I'm not paying the BBC one penny. The BBC disgusts me. I think that the BBC is the problem, and Bannon is right about this. That we need to recognise that our first enemy is the controlled press, and we need to go after it and attack it hard, really hard. And that's doing videos like this is good, because we're providing something quite different to what most people get to see on the mainstream press.
Yeah, and I think you can also, if you look at the example of Trump, I think you can also weaponize the fact that much of the public are actually caught on to the fact that the media is just full of lies and propaganda, and use that against them. I think what Trump has done in America has been absolutely brilliant. He's just totally made them look like fools.
Wonderful. I watched have your lights gone out?
My lights have gone. They're back.
Okay. I watched a great press conference today where he took to task a lady reporter who was not asking the important things about what the press conference was supposed to be about, and was just doing the standard thing of going off on some great tabloid bullshit story about how Trump's, personally related to Hitler or something. I don't know what it was, some rubbish. And he just took her out and said, "Look, why aren't we talking about trade? That's what we're all here for. Can we all grow up?" And it's great. I love seeing him do that. I love seeing him hold the press to account. and try to make them do their job a bit better.
Do you think that? Do you think that what Trump has done in America is kind of what UKIP wanted to do in Britain?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I certainly had a view to doing that whenever I went on radio or TV in this last year. I certainly had a view to driving a wedge between the disgusting, venal traitor class in our media establishment and the decent but beleaguered listener or viewer who is fed all of this nonsense and has to somehow find some way through the jungle of lies that they spew out 24 hours a day. And so yes, I certainly had the intention of doing that. And for instance, take my interview with Vanessa Feltz, when she started banging on about Carl's joke, it's like we're sitting there in a room festooned with BBC branding everywhere. And this is an organization that, that knowingly protect a prolific paedophile for decades. And we're getting that sort of crap from her. And she tried to say that she didn't work for the BBC. We're sitting in a BBC studio on her show. She just couldn't respond to it. The hypocrisy of them, the dishonesty, the agenda, the refusal to do what reporters and the press should do, which is try to be as objective as possible and try to report properly with an open mind and without imbuing the story with lashings of politicized prejudice, which is all that they ever do. And so yeah, definitely we need to take them on. Definitely it's a goal to get on there and hold them to account and ridicule them and rip them apart, and whenever possible point out that they are a bunch of liars, because they really are, and they're highly politicized. And yeah, they disgust me. That's why I don't have a TV, and that's why I can't tell you anything at all about Love Island. But I take your word for it. I take your word for it that it is,
bollocks,
mindless trash. And just filling people's heads and wasting their lives. I remember seeing on an underpass back in the 80s in the States a graffiti which was just a TV box with a sort of slightly off rounded rectangular screen and a little aerial done very crudely, and on the screen it just said, "Consume, be silent, die." And that back then, I thought it was, entertaining, but perhaps a little bit too cynical. Now I don't think it's too cynical at all. I think that's
too close to reality now.
That is what they want of us. They want us to just, be spoon-fed and think what we're told, and believe all of their just, festival of lies that goes on every year. Every year is lied.
You have to make it so so poetic, don't you, Richard? The festival of lies.
Well, it is, and that's the problem. Is it's just sickening, and you have to find a way of expressing just how sickening it is, because no one would believe it. Look at old Emily Thornberry on the box today or yesterday, whenever it was. Did you see that interview? Oh my God! And
no, I didn't actually.
In our parliament, these people in our parliament, and she's just the enemy. She is just poisonous and stupid and brainwashed and dangerous. Dangerous people destroying this country.
I agree. I've got some more here. One said, do you think there's any downside of... Sorry, I'm getting a bit of an echo here, but I'll get through it. Do you think there was a downside of promoting Sargon? And also, I've got one here asking about David Curtin, if he knew what the latest news was with him. I'm not quite sure what that's referring to.
Last time I saw David Curtin was at the NEC meeting on the 12th of October. I haven't seen or spoken to him since. I've always liked David. As soon as I was elected, I called him up and I had a meeting with him. I think he's a good man, and I can see that many people have been, have got have got cold feet about UKIP over the last few years for lots of different reasons. I think he probably did, for various reasons. But he's a good guy, and I like him. He speaks very well on cultural Marxism, and there it is. When it comes to Carl, so the question was there a downside to having Carl apart? I don't really believe so. No. Paul Oakley, famously flounced out at the Southeast Conference. He's a good guy, but he didn't want to be in the same party as Carl, or didn't want to be on the AC or whatever it was. But I don't agree with that. Look, Carl talks to people, and he talks about a lot of things, and he's an interesting character, and he makes a lot of sense. He's got his own ideas, and all of this crap about the joke. I mean, what a load of rubbish. Honestly, there's some serious things going on in this world. We've got serious problems politically. We've got serious problems, and we need to talk about stuff that matters. And making some stupid joke, 3 years ago when he wasn't even a member of the party, and I just think it's absurd. And the people who've got their daggers drawn for him in the party, I think are. I don't think they understand how much he's contributed since he joined, and I don't think they understand that he is a liberal person who believes in free speech and believes in Brexit. And if that doesn't qualify you to be a good member of UKIP and contribute to UKIP, then it should. So I don't accept criticism of Carl. He's a good guy.
Well, Carl is still a member as well, as far as I'm aware.
As far as I'm aware, he's still a member. I'm still a member. I'm suspended, apparently, by the chairman that I had actually suspended before she suspended me. It was like that scene from Blackadder, I poo-poo you, but I poo-poo your poo-poo. It really is the most childish thing. I mean, I just can't be bothered with it. So yeah, I think Carl still is a member. I think there's lots of good members like Carl and myself thinking hard about whether we can go on supporting a party run by Kirsten Herriot. And
well, whatever happens in the future, I think you, Gerard Batten, and Sargon have built up such a great relationship, and I love the videos you did when you were at the pub, just talking about issues, whether it be firearms or Brexit. I would hope that in the future you would continue to do more things together, whatever that may be.
Yeah, absolutely. I intend to do that. I mean, I've been having a little bit of a break, I suppose. I think I've decided that just staying a bit quiet and staying out of the way was probably the best course of action in the current circumstances, bearing in mind this controversy. I mean, I'm always mindful. I always have been mindful until probably this very conversation, that I didn't want to damage the party in any way. But finally, it's got to the point where I've had enough, and I just I don't really care anymore. And if I say things that people don't like about the party, well, what are you going to do? Sue me? I don't know. So yeah, I'd love to do more videos with Carl and with Gerard. Great, I get on with them. I find them very easy to understand and talk to, and I want to do more. I hope that we'll all find either that UKIP is resuscitated and we're able to get back on board and really get behind the party again one day soon, because things come right, or that there turns out to be another vehicle for people like us to go out there and make the arguments. So that's what I hope for. I don't intend to give up. 3.5 years ago, when we won the referendum, I immediately knew that we probably had a 10-year struggle ahead of us actually to leave. So, I'm taking a little bit of a sabbatical now, but I may come back in the months ahead with new ventures, new directions.
Oh, okay. That's a shame, because someone just asked you if you were considering for standing as London mayor. So I guess that's out the window now.
Not. I mean, I would consider it, but not right now for UKIP. No, and unless unless some miracle happens and the party is able to sweep away those who have abandoned the democratic principles that the party should be built on.
So I've got a couple questions about other parties, actually. What do you make of, well, one of them I'm interested to hear your opinion of. What do you think of For Britain? And also, what do you think of the English Democrats? Because I know one member, Alan, has recently joined the English Democrats. What do you think? What do you think of them as in terms of how a force in politics, shall we say?
Well, I like For Britain's policies mostly. They seem to be quite a sensible party with a spine. The only issue I have is that I think Anne Marie, I have great admiration for her, and she's an inspirational person in many ways. But I think she's a tricky personality, and I'd be nervous of joining a party that is, so much based around one person who has a tricky personality. I'm nervous of personality cults generally, and
I'm nervous about all personality cults unless they're around Gerard Batten, in which case I'm all for it.
I'm not even happy with a Gerard Batten personality cult. Gerard's a great guy, but he's not perfect. He makes mistakes just like the rest of us, so he's definitely a good man, and I have a lot of respect and admiration for him. But coming on to the English Democrats, I actually had lunch with Robin Tilbrook about 10 days ago or so, and he's a very nice guy, very interesting guy, very very kind. I like him a lot, he's the sort of man and the sort of party that could grow into something. The only problem that I have with it is that I want to see the UK stay together and remain integrated. I think some unions work, some don't. The Union of the United Kingdom has been a success over many centuries and took this country through an extraordinary period of history where we really were a most amazingly prosperous and successful country, not just taking from the world, but giving a lot to the world too. And so I think that union between Scotland, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland is an exceptional and wonderful thing. And I do not wish to see these four countries, these four nations separate in that way. So that's why I'm loath to support English Democrats. I think that we've got too many levels of government. I support the idea of abolishing the Welsh Assembly and even the Scottish Parliament. I think that they were put in place by Blair in order to be divisive for the sake of the European Union as a stage in breaking up the United Kingdom and diminishing its power, and in particular its power to resist rule by Brussels. So I'm against those parliaments, and I would like to see the UK return to greater integration, not less. So devolution is something that I believe in. I've got relatives, my own. I come from all over the British Isles. I've got Irish and Scottish and English, and so I see myself as British before I see myself as English. And I think that's fair enough. The peoples of these islands are very closely related. All the DNA analysis shows that an Englishman is much more closely related to a Scotsman than he is to a Belgian, and certainly an Italian or a Spaniard. So so I do believe in the Union and Britain as a unique place and a unique culture and history of people.
I think I remember actually hearing a fact ages ago that apparently the Anglos, the original English people actually came from Wales or something like that. But that might be wrong, so don't take my word for it.
Well, there's it's very, very complicated. It depends how far back you go. If you're going to start going back 10,000 years, There's Celt and all of that, and when the Romans came, certainly the British and throughout the first millennium, the British peoples and tribes that migrated towards the Celtic fringe, but in fact quite small numbers came in from the continent generally, and that genetically they don't seem to have had very much impact. Immigration over the last 50 years has been way in excess of any of the waves of immigration that took place before that over the last 2,000 years. So there isn't really very much Roman in the blood of the British, and there isn't that much Norman. There isn't much Norman in there either. So there is, or at least there was, a British people, and there's nothing wrong with that. And the British people should be proud of our great history and our great contribution to the world.
I actually bought a really interesting book when I was in Stratford upon Avon in one of these old bookstores, and it's just called something like Immigration to England 1066 to 1945, and it's amazing, all the little migration waves. And I can't remember who made this point. I think it was Mark Stein that said even the Huguenots, when they came over to England, these were Protestants from France. If you compare that to today's migration, that is just a blip in what today's migration is. It's not even like comparable. What we get now is way more than even the Huguenots coming over back then.
That's right. It's a much smaller number than the sort of scale we see today, and also they were culturally
they're Protestants,
and ethnically close, Christians and cousins, really, and not that that's everything, but it certainly there's no question that it is harder to assimilate to a culture and a tradition on the far side of the world than it is to neighboring countries, or in most cases. So I think that's a factor, but the numbers were much smaller, and the levels of immigration we have now are absolutely unprecedented, and it's an experiment that hasn't really been tried before, and I'm not sure whether it's been well thought out either. So that's that. But just coming back to this question about English Democrats, I think that when you think about UKIP's name, United Kingdom Independence, actually it's the antithesis. English Democrats is sort of the antithesis of UKIP. UKIP is about the UK. It's in the name, and that's why I think that the English Democrats don't appeal to me. I am interested to see if some new movement or party starts up. The Brexit Party obviously has had a meteoric rise in its first year, and it's had funding from various people and so on. And we know that Mr. Nigel Farage is a formidable celebrity proponent, but I don't know if the party name is going to continue to be relevant. Maybe it will, and I also don't know if the party is going to transform itself into something more with a more democratic structure. If it were to do that, and if it were to perhaps think a bit more carefully about some of the Marxists and pro-mass immigration people that have infiltrated it, then I think it could easily grow into with hard work over a period of years, could grow into a big force. The
Brexit Party.
Yeah, I don't see why it couldn't, but it's got to. It'll have to change in lots of painful ways, but I don't see why it couldn't.
Do you think Farage would be willing to let the members have that much control, though?
Well, will he always be its leader?
That's true. Yeah. But so who do you think would be the next person down? It would be Richard Tice, presumably, but he's more of a free trader, kind of, not our kind of conservative, I would say.
it's very difficult to predict those things. Quite often leaders come forward and you had no idea, and they gradually come out of the woodwork. I remember when John Major became the Tory leader, and I was like, John who? No one could work out who he was. He was such a grey man. He was so lacking in any kind of personality, as he still is. So leaders come. I'm not sure what the process for electing a new leader or gaining a new leader is in the Brexit party, and that will be interesting to see if the time comes. But maybe it won't survive. Maybe UKIP won't survive. One thing I'm sure of is that if neither of those parties survive, there is going to be a desperate need for a sensible, moderate, anti-Marxist, anti-political correctness party, with its feet firmly on the ground in UK politics, and who knows what that will be.
Well, yeah, I'm actually getting a lot of comments here saying that we need a new party and someone should set one up. And then when you mentioned For Britain, I've spoken to quite a few people from Integrity, and they don't seem to be that interested in For Britain, which I was quite surprised at. Again, because of what you said about Anne-Marie being quite sort of controlling, maybe. And so, yeah, well, it seems.
Don't forget that she also was in the Labour Party, and yes, I think she probably is quite controlling. I think she's quite a tricky personality. So, yeah, I mean, of course, often to get things done, it takes people with a bit of an ego, and maybe that's what it takes. But look at their manifesto. I mean, I think it's excellent, and I can understand why people support that manifesto. So these are the questions. Really, ultimately, what needs to happen is that people on the moderate side of politics, rather than the extreme left side of politics, which are the only two sides that exist now, people on the moderate side need to get together, because we cannot allow the Tories to become the notional right-wing party when in fact they continue to slide ever leftwards, and are going to fail to deliver Brexit. That's not good enough. They're not good enough. We need something much more intelligent, and much less reactive. We need something. We need the projection of ideas about freedom, and about the traditional benefits of Western societies and the freedoms that we value so much.
See, this is where I would have to disagree with you, Richard. My worry is that we're going to have many of these sort of small right-wing parties pop up, parties like For Britain, and who knows, Integrity might start their own party. And then also, well, we've got UKIP. I know it's not very right-wing now. It's pretty wet. But really, we need to unite the right, as the phrase goes, not in the alt-right definition of it.
Sorry, let me just point out, when I say moderate, I'm referring to the thing that you call right. I don't think there really is a right wing anymore in this country or in the West, really. I think that everything has slid so far to the left during my lifetime that there really is only, the spectrum runs from moderate to extreme left. That's the spectrum.
I would have to agree with you there. I just like using the term right wing because it's a bit more punk rock. So
I don't think, I'm not sure it is. I mean, punk was about anarchy, and I'm not sure that anarchy is right wing at all.
You make a good point there.
So I'm not sure I see right wing as being punky.
It's pretty punk today when you consider the fact that the whole political spectrum's gone left. It's pretty punk to be right wing. That's more what I mean. Or to call yourself right wing.
I suppose it is. I mean, I just don't think we need these labels. I'm reminded of what Marine Le Pen said. there's no left and right wing anymore. They're just globalists and patriots.
Yeah.
And
Well, yeah, I agree with that.
resetting the political spectrum. The David Goodhart book, the somewhere people and the anywhere people. That's the new political spectrum. And so I tend not to think in terms of left and right wing because it's too easy to make mistakes. The prejudices don't really work.
Okay, well, going back to my theory, I think that if we have a lot of these small parties, I don't think in the long term it's gonna be very beneficial to our cause. For
That's
me,
right.
I think we need to unite, and for me, the most logical party to unite under is, unfortunately, for you, it's the Conservatives. I do strongly believe that, and I think that what Boris Johnson is doing, the fact that he's got people like Priti Patel as Home Secretary, who's pretty sensical when it comes to immigration and all the things we care about. I think that it's moving in the right direction, and I guess I always look at the politics now through what Trump has done in America, because for me, that's the biggest thing to happen in politics around the world, maybe for decades. And I think what Trump has done, he's gone into the Republicans and he's basically totally transformed the Republicans in a way that the Republicans can't be anything other than the Trump Republican Party now. And so hopefully, with the Conservatives moving in this, what I see as a positive direction, we can sort of just edge that on just a little bit more and just get it to a point where, we have solid principles and we can't be sort of unwoven, like I know you probably fear that might happen eventually in the future.
Yeah, I mean, whether the Tory party is actually heading in that direction or not
but can I flip it on your
question.
Can I flip it on your head? Can I flip it on its head there for a second? Say, let's pretend we're in America and there was an American Richard Braine, and this American Richard Braine says, "Oh no, you can never transform the Republicans. The Republicans are always going to be terrible, and it's not good." If you had that attitude, you wouldn't have Trump, would you? So, do you see what I'm getting at here?
I totally understand you. So essentially, this is the pitch. You think I should join the Tories and
yes,
and go there. I think if you think that my progress against the current of UKIP's Supreme Eternal Chairman and NEC was anything to go by, the chances of making any progress against the Tory machine is, I think, absolutely zero. The Tories are a very skillfully and carefully controlled party. The power sits quietly behind the party, is a puppet of a big business and the European Union. And
if that, I'm going to have to repeat this question again, I'm afraid, but if that was the case, then why would people like Philip Hammond and Rory Stewart be leaving?
Well, because it's like Stalingrad. When the soldier, you get off the barge by the riverside, and when the soldier and when the comrade in front of you falls, you step over him and you pick up his gun and you shoot with his gun. Remainers. There's no shortage of Remainers. They're not going to run out. Remainers. Of their caliber are churned out in vast numbers by our universities. And there will be no shortage of them. So, so I don't think that necessarily illustrates anything. Whereas I'm looking at this candidate here, Lisa Townsend, for which constituency is she in? She's a new Tory candidate, and here she is, a picture of her in her Vote Remain, I'm strong in her Stronger In t-shirt, and she was a card-carrying campaigner for stopping Brexit and for Remain, and she's a Tory candidate. Now, if the party actually had really changed, how could someone like her be a candidate? They would just say, "Sorry, you're a hardcore Remainer. Go away," because we've got plenty of candidates who really do support Brexit, and we don't need you.
But that's not
But
happening.
was she in a position previously, or has she just come on the scene just now?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Well, it does,
Behind
because
behind the scenes, right, the
Yeah.
Tory party is still giving succor to hardcore Remainers.
Right. But do you think
If
maybe
you actually intended to leave the European Union, you wouldn't allow those people anywhere near anything.
Well, I remember you said to me once, you catch more bees with honey, not by vinegar. So do you think that maybe, Boris Johnson and the cabinet of the Tories might be going along that kind of strategy where, you don't want to purge all the Remainers straight away, but you want to ease yourself into it?
I don't think so. No, I think you don't want to make the mistake that I made in UKIP. I think that if I was if I was serious about leaving the EU and I was in the Tory party in a senior position, you're going to have to get rid of all the Remainers. Thank God, Dominic Grieve and Anna Soubry have gone, but don't let more of them in at the new candidate level. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Why would you do that? The answer is we're not leaving. The answer is Boris's deal is Merkel's deal. It's the Merkel-May-Boris deal. Hasn't changed. And what it means, that deal, is that we go in deeper into the EU. We lose our political representation, but we're still stuck in every aspect of it, in particular the military and the not being able to make trade deals. It's very crucial for them. Don't underestimate how crucial it is for the EU that we can't make international trade deals of our own, because we'll do really well. We'll do well at that. People want to trade with us. We're a big economy, and there's still a significant amount of goodwill. We still have a reputation. I mean, just look at our royal family. Go to the States and pick up any of those crappy magazines that they have in supermarkets, and you see our royal family on the cover and pictures of everywhere. We still have a very we have a visible international presence, and we have relations with every part of the world. Look at Hong Kong and Singapore and Australia and all that. So we can actually do really well, and that's what they're so scared of. That's why Michel Barnier said we cannot afford for Britain to be to have what he called it. He said a competitive edge, and that tells the whole story, because if leaving the EU gives you a competitive edge, then why be in it?
Well, I actually think that Boris is actually more like you than you think, and he does want to become competitive and strike deals with everyone from Hong Kong to Singapore. But I do think he's working with a rough deal, Theresa May's old deal, and he couldn't completely change it because he had his hands tied, basically. But I don't want to go too much into that, because you actually made a really interesting point there where you said they shouldn't make the same mistake as I did in regards to UKIP, as far as not getting rid of people quickly. So going back to UKIP quickly, do you think that maybe you could have been a bit more hard line to sort of secure the party a bit more?
Yeah, lots of people have told me that I didn't take advantage of my resounding win in the leadership race rapidly and ruthlessly enough.
So you should have done more of a Stalin and just off with the heads.
Well, it's difficult to know. It's difficult to know what I could have done, because, of course, immediately you're elected, you discover that you don't have any powers, and that even people whose contracts say that they work for you think that they don't, and think that they actually think that you work for them. And so, it's difficult to know how that advantage could have been exploited. And perhaps it's my own naivety or just lack of experience. But certainly, once a month or two had gone by, and I was really being stopped from doing anything much, it became untenable, and I couldn't keep going. So yeah, I think you need to, yes, you need to make your advantages pay.
Yeah.
Immediately. And I'm sure that a more skillful operator and a more ruthless operator than myself would have done so.
Well, I would push back on that slightly.
I apologize to the members for not knowing how to solve the problems.
Well, I would push back on that slightly for the fact that the UKIP leader doesn't actually have a hell of a lot of power, like you've pointed out previously. And so I think, yes, maybe you could have won the war with the members, maybe, and won the war of opinion, maybe more. But like you said before, you only had a very limited set of tools, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question. I mean, lots of UKIP leaders have discovered that it wasn't very easy to make any progress. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to share my screen with you, if I can, because I don't know how this works. Can I just drag an image into the chat or not?
Are you on a computer or a phone?
Yeah, computer.
Oh, I'm not quite sure. You might have to turn your computer around, to be honest.
If I hit share screen like that.
Okay, go on, give it a bash.
Okay, let's try it. See what happens. Which one have we got, Bonnie? I'm going to send
While you do that, there's a question.
Yeah, I'll answer. Go on.
While you do that, I was going to say there's a question here, which is saying, should the members who supported you stay with UKIP?
No comment.
Well, I know what they should do. They should join the Tories with me and become Purple Tories, and we can start the Purple Revolution, Richard. The Purple Revolution.
Definitely do that. But but what I would say is that something's got to change. I'm not prepared to keep supporting the party in its current guise. It's really it's just too depressing. I think that I'm really hoping that serious things are going to change. And I'm trying to just drag an image onto the thing. It doesn't seem to work. What happens if I put it? Can I drag an image into the chat? No.
Right. I see. Yeah, I've seen there's a share screen option. To be honest, this is the first time I've really used this software, other than testing it earlier. So,
okay, I'm sharing the screen. Let's see what happens.
Okay.
Can you see my screen now?
Nope.
Just doesn't seem to work. Never mind. It's not important.
Well, what were you going to show us?
I was going to show you the. I was going to show you the branch officer's handbook structure, party structure, UKIP structure. You can get it on myukip.com. It's called Branch Officer Handbook, and on page 2, it's got a diagram of the structure of the UKIP, and with a sort of typical kind of pyramid, and it says party leader at the top. And I suppose I naively imagined that that's how things would work. That I would get helpful advice from lots of people, and various people would do this and that and help me do the job, and that I would be able to make decisions about things. And of course, when I was elected, I discovered it doesn't work like that. And essentially what happens is you make a suggestion and then you're told no, and then another one and you're told no, and it just goes on like that. No, until eventually you just give up and think, I've got better things to do with my life than bash my head against a brick wall.
Yeah, I agree. Well, it seems you're sort of staying apolitical at the moment. Sorry, not apolitical. You don't really have a party. You don't really intend to join any party. It sounds like from what you're saying, right?
I'm keeping my powder dry. I want to see what happens. I don't entirely give up hope that UKIP can transform itself back into a democratic party that we can all get behind with some pride. But for the moment, I don't feel that I've got no interest in helping UKIP or campaigning for it, because frankly, the senior people in the party have been unbelievably childish and treated me very stupidly.
So, how is your personal life? Because I don't think a lot of people realise this, but the leader of UKIP isn't actually paid. The chairman is, for some reason. So you did actually take a bit of a financial hit becoming UKIP leader. So how is it transitioning back to not being a political party leader?
Well, in some ways, it's a relief after the last 3 years have been fairly intense, and certainly my business has suffered, and culminating in a full-time job which is completely unpaid. And yes, so getting back to business is my plan, and I'm doing that. I did a job a few days ago, photography job, and I'm also working on a web site for a customer at the moment. So I'm still at it, and I'm going to have to grow my business back up again after the neglect of the last months and the last 3 years.
Do you ever get the odd comment from a client saying, "Oh, I saw you on Sky News" or anything like that? And do you think that might have affected your business in any way?
Well, it certainly did. I was going to do a show last autumn, actually, and at a gallery of a friend of mine, and his staff Googled me and saw that I had stood for UKIP and said that they wouldn't work to put on my show. They're quite happy to put on the show of a Mexican communist who has genuinely dangerous ideas, but as instanced by the 100 million or so dead in the 20th century, but a moderate national independence party like UKIP was too much for them to stomach, because they're all good, internationalist mind slaves, and so that didn't come off, and certainly that's loss of earnings, no question about it, and you just have to suck it up and get inventive and find a way of making money and getting paid, in that environment, and it's not easy.
I mean, to be honest, I found it pretty remarkable that you, being a person in the media arts world, that you would publicly display proudly on your website, "I am the representative of London for UKIP,"
Yeah.
knowing.
Well, but you've got to stand up and be counted if you believe in something in this world, and you've got to take the rough with the smooth. You actually, if people are going to pelt you with tomatoes, well, they're going to pelt you with tomatoes, and you have to just lift your chin up and say, fine, more stones, like Giles Corey from The Crucible said. If you have the strength of your convictions, you don't have to admit to witchcraft.
Yeah, well, I was actually a camera assistant for a little while, and I just sort of got sick of that atmosphere. And well, I actually did get fired from a job for my views on Islam, which is, I believe, it's a inherently, sexist, fascist religion. And so I became an electrician, where literally no one gives a crap about what your beliefs are politically, and it's amazingly liberating.
Yeah,
so
that's it. That's it. It is liberating. I mean, one of the things I loved about visiting branches and UKIP members when I was leader is, it's just a relief to be with people where, you can say what you want and it doesn't really matter. They aren't going to get offended and take it personally or label you or behave with prejudice towards you. And you meet people in UKIP who are quite left wing and quite right wing and quite whatever it is. They, from every, you can't pretend that, you look at Dankula, for instance, and so the point I'm making is that there's a wide range of political views within UKIP. But when you meet UKIP people, you know that you're meeting people who are open to discussion and who are relaxed about these things and who don't come at it with a sort of prejudice and suspicion. And unfortunately, as you rightly say, there are many businesses and careers where that's not the case, and where you do meet great prejudice for not slavishly towing the BBC line.
Well, the media is by far the worst, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's it. Well, but there's some interesting people in the media I met who, who say, well, you see, my producer's terrible, but he's away for a couple of weeks, so we can get you on, and they're sort of undercover. They're few and far between. But there are people in the media who are aware that they come from a sort of monoculture that is highly censorious and a really difficult environment to speak freely in.
Well, I don't know if you saw the recent Project Veritas expose of CNN. I was actually quite surprised that a lot of their employees, even though they were left-wing, were actually quite sick of the controlling behaviour of the chairman of CNN, and saying that, well, actually, it is totally politicised and biased, the news. I am left-wing, but even I think this is ridiculous.
Yeah, well, I mean, but it was an interesting discovery for me to find that The Guardian would print what I said and allow me to defend myself, whereas UKIP, NEC wouldn't. In other words, if the phone goes and it's The Guardian, at least you get, I thought, well, they'll give me a fair crack.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the experience of being leaders made me feel that I actually have been more fairly treated by The Guardian than by the party.
Well, I was actually quite surprised, if I'm being honest, about the way the media treated you, because there were some articles which were ridiculous, such as saying you wanted to outright ban the Quran. But I mean, you did actually have some not terrible articles where people actually gave you a fair hearing, or they just reported what you said. It wasn't all terrible.
No, that's right. And yeah, well, it was an interesting experience. I did my best. I actually came to enjoy TV and radio interviews because I discovered that I felt I acquitted myself reasonably well in them and managed to get a few points across. And so I came to sort of enjoy them and look forward to them, and was ready to do more of that. But we'll see what the future holds.
Oh, well, I definitely enjoyed your interviews, I have to say. It kind of felt, because Gerard obviously had a very different style, but I liked his style as well. But to me, it kind of appeared like if Christopher Hitchens became a political party leader. And that's how it felt. And that's why I quite liked the way you would argue with people like Femi and things like that. I think you're very good when it comes to debating. So
Femi, that Femi interview was interesting. The problem is you look back at that, and I think I could have done so much better because there's many points you made where I failed to really properly expose the nonsense that he speaks, and I could do better at that. But on balance, it went fine. I mean, the main thing about him is he's just incredibly annoying, and he just sort of pesters you by repeatedly asking you the same daft question about some highly marginal case that he's obsessed by, and just keeps asking it yes or no, yes or no, yes or no, and sort of trying to force you into submission. And
soundbite.
Yeah, and it, for that reason, it's not that difficult to deal with that because he's not really making sense. So all you need to do is talk sensibly and openly about things, and already you look better than he does because he's not doing that. So yeah, the Femi interview was fine. Anyway, I mean, I'm ready to do more. We'll see what happens in the future. And I don't know, I don't know if I'm going to have the opportunity again. to talk about these things and to talk about politics in the media. But I'm ready to do it. And if UKIP actually, fixes itself and gets its act together, I could get back on board and be ready to help the party again, and do what I can for it. But for the moment, no. I mean, not with some of the people in charge who are in charge at the moment.
Maybe you could join Turning Point UK.
I went to a Turning Point. I went to a Turning Point event at Imperial College a couple of weeks ago, actually. It was okay. It wasn't great. It could have been better. I think the speakers were nice and good, interesting people, but I think they could have been more. It could have been higher brow. It could have been higher brow. I think it could have had people, a couple of people more expert maybe. But it was still worthwhile. We had the very nice Dominique Simons. Is it Dominique Simons?
I don't know.
And then is it Mahyar, whatever he's called, Mahyar, the Iranian guy? He was quite good.
I'm not sure, to be honest. I mostly know them from some of their cringy videos, if I'm being honest, which I didn't think were the best of quality.
Yeah,
but well, I do appreciate what they're doing. They're trying to do something positive, which is sort of make a mass movement against the sort of culture. They're basically trying to fight it on the culture front, aren't they?
Yeah,
as well as the political front.
Yeah, and I met the guy. It's Lance. What's he called? Lance Foreman's son. Is it Ollie? He's got Ollie Foreman. Is it?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
He seemed like quite a nice chap. So I'm interested in attending things and sort of staying involved, but we'll see. I'm open-minded about what the future holds.
Okay, I wanted to ask you one more question, actually, but if anyone has some quick questions that they want to fire in, do it now, because we won't be going on for very much longer. I'm really interested in the fact that you went to Eton. Because we all know this world of Eton, and so many politicians are pumped out of Eton. You're actually from that school. You know what it's all about, and you've been around these people. So what is it about this place? One point I want to particularly make, actually, is I remember Sargon actually made a point which I thought was quite interesting, where he said to be a good politician, you almost have to have a theoretical, I'm not sure if that's the right word, punch to the face in life, so, people that have gone through hard times make good politicians. And he said, although Eton is, a very posh place where you think, everyone's privileged, so they're already going to be there, you are put through a lot of hard knocks through Eton, and that's why he reckons Boris actually has a good political instinct, because he's been run through the mill of Eton. So do you have anything to say about Eton in general and that whole culture around that place?
I don't think it's in terms of hard knocks, I don't think there are any more hard knocks there than at any other school. But you are from the day you arrive, you are treated essentially as an adult at age 13. You're given lots of spare time. You have your own room, and you're expected to organize your own life and get your work sorted out and get where you have to go. And initially, your first week or two, few weeks at the school are probably quite daunting in that respect. But you're just expected to get your act together. And I think that's a good thing. You're not spoon-fed. At the same time, there's vast resources available to you in terms of the facilities, and if you have interests in anything, then you can pursue them. I remember showing my nephew around the school a few years ago there was a group of boys, I don't know, 15, let's say 10-year-olds looking around the school, 11-year-olds looking around the school, and the housemaster of the house that we went to have a look at explained that I think it was the dame, explained that they had this old bike shed, sort of garage, quite a big room, and there was a boy who wanted to study ballet, but the school had no ballet facilities or no ballet club, or just there was no ballet, and so they built a ballet studio in this garage next to the house, so that he had a fantastic ballet studio with a bar and the right kind of floor and the mirrors and everything. And he became a very enthusiastic ballet dancer. And I think that is a measure of the school, that it does have this kind of culture of opportunity, and that talent is something that is greatly admired at the school. And having a go at something is also greatly admired. Get on with it and do great things, and that culture is there from the beginning. So it's a very, it's a very, very positive, atmosphere in many, many ways for that reason. Later on that day, when I was showing my nephew around, the tea, all the prospective pupils, and one of them asked the question during tea to the dame, how do you meet people in other houses and so on, and someone said ballet squad, and that's the sort of place it is. There's everything there. There's every kind of person there. There's lots of interesting people there. You could argue, and it wouldn't be very politically correct to do so, that because the fees are high and the school has a reputation for excellence, and it's got reasonably high standards of entry via exams and so on, that it is quite a pool of talent at the school, and that is a sort of a not an explosive mixture, but a catalyst for achievement. If you're surrounded by people who are talented and who are doing interesting things and achieving a lot, then a lot of people will step up and will join in, and will find a way of achieving in their own right. And then some of us don't, but that's the way it is. So I'm grateful that I went to school. I think it's a very good school. I was quite ill in my last in lower sixth, and I left the school with a D and 2 E's in my A levels. And then the following year, I retook my A levels away from Eton and got 3 A's and got into Oxford. So it's not a faultless recipe for success at all. And there's plenty of people that drop out, and so it's I think that image of the school is a bit misleading. It's a big school. It's a school that selects pupils on entry according to ability. And of course, don't forget that it's a school that for nearly 600 years has been educating people from underprivileged backgrounds who are able and who do well in scholarship exams. It was set up to educate people who couldn't afford an education. It has consistently done that. The King's Scholars have been educated at the school for nearly 600 years now. So if any school has proved that it has an extraordinary track record for charitable education, Eton has done so. It's worth remembering that.
So going through the, Eton and Oxford and these prestigious places, do you think you maybe have extra insight into Boris Johnson's thinking when it comes to how he's acting politically now?
No.
Oh, okay, that's disappointing.
But what I would say is this. When I look at Boris Johnson, I look very carefully at his sister, his brothers, and his parents, because the apple usually doesn't fall very far from the tree.
Right. Okay. Well, I'm going to go on the hope that the apple did fall far from the tree. So how about that?
Well, okay, but I'm saying don't be surprised or disappointed when Boris fails to deliver anything like true Brexit.
Well,
I'm not saying he
we'll
won't.
see.
I'm saying I don't expect him to.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got some more questions. I think we'll just finish with firing off with the last few questions, if that's all right.
Go ahead.
Blah, blah, blah. Okay. Again, calls for a new party, new populist movement. Would you join For Britain, Libertarian Party, the Brexit Party, Conservatives? I think we've kind of discussed that, haven't we? You're sort of on the fence, and you're not really leaning towards anyone in particular, are you?
Well, it's interesting. This could be the first general election in 30 years or something where I don't vote.
You wouldn't even vote Tory just to get Brexit through.
I don't know what I'll do, but it's quite possible that for the first time, really, in my adult life, I won't vote.
Right. Okay. Well, that's a shame.
My MP was the borough manager of Stronger Inn in Kensington and Chelsea. He has made some quite strong Brexity noises over the last year or so, but I don't trust him. The Tories. Look, for 3.5 years, the Tories have been saying, "Oh, we're going to leave. We're going to leave. We're going to leave."
Yeah.
Look at it. It's like football. Don't watch their feet. Watch the ball. They go on saying that. That doesn't make it true. Don't be taken in what they say. Look at what they do. Look at what actually happens. How much closer to leaving the EU are we now than we were 3 years ago? The answer is none. No closer. No closer.
Well,
and
we got pretty close.
In fact, we've signed 7 letters of agreement or something about PESCO and military unification. We've committed through this withdrawal agreement to all kinds of terrible, terrible betrayals of this country's sovereignty. So I just don't believe it. Call me a doubting Thomas, that's fine, but I still don't believe it. I think we're going to see fake Tory Brexit too. I've tweeted it and said it so many times over the last year or two.
But at least if we got Brexit through, that we could reverse some of the damage which has been done. Do you not believe that?
If we were allowed actually to leave, yes, but don't be fooled by the agreement that Boris is pushing. It's nothing to do with Brexit. It's nothing like actual Brexit.
I disagree. I understand the issues with the deal, but I think there are actually many good things about it, as well as some bad things, particularly the European Court of Justice, which I consider by far to be the worst aspect of it. I would refer people to the Lawyers for Britain article, which says, yes, this is a flawed deal, but it's there are good things about it, and we can reverse a lot of it. And the fact that Farage is saying what he's saying, also that there is movement there, and many things can be unaligned. I think there is cause for hope there. I think we shouldn't be too caught up in every little detail, and just try and get the thing through and do what we can about it at a later stage, the bits which aren't so appealing. But the main point, we're out of the EU, we're out of the customs union. But
we're not, because it contains an agreement that we remain aligned on customs, and it also means that we won't be able to make our own trade deals. So what you just said, we should be happy to gain the good bits of it. What are these?
Well, you say that about the customs union, but you know, we can unalign ourselves by 2020, I believe, like Farage says. So, and also we don't have the backstop anymore. There are good things, surprisingly, about the deal. Maybe not quite to your standard,
We've got a
Richard.
effective border in the Irish Channel, but effectively we've got a border in the Irish Channel. It's all good to say we don't have the backstop, but in fact, the solution to that was okay. Allow Northern Ireland to be separated off from the UK. The very last thing that that the unionists want, and really, it is a further step towards breaking up the UK.
Well, I disagree. I think we're going to have to agree to disagree there. This is the most quiet I've seen you all day, Richard.
Well, I've just seen a tweet. I've just seen a message come up saying, "Wow, you guys are still chatting." So
Yeah,
I can't remember how long we've been on. I've got a bit of a cold. I've got a bit of a cold, so it could be time. I think we're approaching time to sign off now. So let's see how we can wrap it up. I see there's a nice one here saying Boris's mum voted leave. I'm interested.
There you go.
Where does that information, Danny? That's Danny RAFC. That's Danny. That's Danny Simpson. I don't know what the evidence is for that.
Well, let's just say it's true. Okay. Thank you, guys, and
thanks everybody for watching. Thanks for the questions. I hope some of them got answered. And thank you very much to Damien. Always a pleasure chatting to you. Always enjoy it. And I hope that one day soon we'll do it over a beer.
Absolutely. And yeah, keep doing things because we still want to hear from you. You know, you may not be the leader of UKIP anymore, but we definitely want to hear what Richard has to say. So there you go.
Thank you very much, Damien. See you all soon.
Okay. See you later.
Now I'm going to be a boomer and see if I can work out how to turn this off.
Well, I'm going to end it right now, so don't worry about it.
All right, I'll let you do it.
See you later.
Great. Rely on the young.